Good evening. When one thinks of celebrities, they typically think of the high life. Parties, expensive cars, fancy jewelry, and absurd amounts of money in the bank. While this may be true for some, there are those out there who never escape the grasp of Hollywood. Some die by their own hands, and some by the hands of others. And even fewer, by means that can be seen as questionable or mysterious. Tonight, we will be looking at 3 celebrity deaths that may not be exactly what they seem. Number 3. Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood, born July 20th, 1938, was an actress that began her career as a child actor and then successfully moved into becoming a successful young adult actress. She began her career at the young age of 4 and hit a co-star role in the 1947 film Miracle on 34th Street. In her teenage years, she was nominated for an Academy Award, and her career continued its successful climb from there, with her landing roles in The Searcher, West Side Story, and Gypsy. After moving up the ladder and becoming a well-respected actress, in the 1970s, Natalie decided to go on a hiatus with her career, and eventually had a child with Robert Wagner. Their relationship was not perfect. They were married, divorced, moved on to other relationships, and then were remarried after those did not work out. During this decade-long hiatus, Natalie only acted in 2 films, one of which netted her a Golden Globe Award, proving that she was still capable of working with the best actors out there. Then, on November 29th of 1981, tragedy struck while she was on a holiday break from her current project's production. Natalie and Robert decided to take a quick trip out to a location known as Catalina Island, a popular vacation spot off the coast of Los Angeles. The 2 of them took their yacht, named the Splendor, out to the island and brought along their friends Christopher Walken and Captain Dennis Davern. On the second night of their trip, the 4 of them had dinner on the island and opted to spend more time on the yacht. During this time on the yacht, Robert Wagner, Natalie's husband, and Christopher Walken got into a full-blown argument about Natalie, specifically whether she should focus on her family or her career, which Natalie had been struggling to balance. Robert reportedly got so angry that he smashed a bottle of wine on the deck and eventually told Christopher that he needed to mind his own business. Once the tension had hit its boiling point, the group attempted to make amends and talk things out, basically agreeing to disagree. Walken went below deck, and Robert stayed up top with Captain Davern to clean up the mess. When the glass had been cleaned up, Robert reportedly went below deck to find his wife, but claimed that she was nowhere to be seen. He states that he went to the end of the boat and noticed that the dinghy was missing, and assumed she had left on the small boat. The main issue with this is that no one claimed to have heard the dinghy firing up, which made this an unlikely possibility. Robert states that he also called the shoreboat to check, however, he was informed that she had not gone ashore. From here, he said he called the Coast Guard in an attempt to get a search going. Sadly, Natalie's body was found floating near the dinghy in a cove near the island. She was wearing her nightgown, socks, and a coat, and not exactly something you would wear if you were taking a small boat to shore. Initially, her death was ruled as an accidental drowning by the Los Angeles coroner. It was noted that Natalie could not swim and had been drinking. The autopsy indicated that her BAC was 0.14%, and they found traces of both motion sickness medication and painkillers in her bloodstream. It was believed that she died around midnight. 2 witnesses claimed that they heard a woman's cries for help in the night, at some time around 11:45 p.m., and that the cries stopped sometime around 12:10 a.m. Neither one of them did anything to help the woman because they reportedly heard another voice saying, "We're coming to get you," several times. Fast forward from here to the year 2011, and the LA County Sheriff's Department opted to reopen the case after Captain Davern reported that he had lied on his initial statement. Captain Davern stated to NBC that Natalie was determined to be missing, and then they did nothing to look for her. No searching, no lights, nothing. He then stated that he believed Robert Wagner was likely responsible for Natalie's death. This was further enforced by the LA County Rescue Captain that stated that he had not received a call to look for her until around 5 a.m. The final status of Natalie Wood's death is drowning and other undetermined factors, with Robert marked as nothing more than a person of interest, and he has obviously maintained his innocence. And while the situation is certainly curious, it's likely that we'll never know if Natalie Wood's death was an accident or if her life was taken from her. Number 2. George Reeves. George Reeves, born in January of 1914, was an actor that was best known for playing the Man of Steel himself in The Adventures of Superman, from the years of 1952 all the way through 1958. George was born in the city of Woolstock, Iowa, and was born only 5 months into his parents' marriage, a marriage that was rocky from the start, and his parents split not very long after his birth. From there, Reeves' mother moved to California to live with her sister, where she eventually remarried, and his father also remarried in 1925, though George never saw his father again after this. In 1927, George's stepfather, Frank Basello, adopted George as his own, and the family seemed happy. That all came apart around 15 years after, when Frank and George's mother, Helen, divorced while George was away from home and visiting his relatives. When he returned home, his mother told him that his stepfather had committed suicide, and Reeves was completely unaware that his stepfather was actually alive. Basically put, all this wraps up into a really complicated childhood and early adulthood of George Reeves. George's career began while he was in college, where he sang and performed on stage. It is here where he met his future wife, Eleonora Needles. The two of them married on September 22nd in 1940 in California, though their happiness was also short-lived. The two of them had no children, and they divorced a mere 10 years later. George's acting career took off in 1939 when he was cast in the movie Gone with the Wind. And while it was a minor role, he was alongside Fred Crane in the opening scene. After this role, Reeves went back to acting at the Pasadena College and was given a lead role on the stage, and this role led him directly into his contact with Warner Brothers. From here, he appeared in a number of movies, including several B pictures, including a couple movies acting alongside Ronald Reagan and several with James Cagney. These roles, however, did not advance his career, and he was released from his Warner Brothers contract. Sadly, from this point on, he was signed on for several more films with 20th Century Fox, and then released. Then, he was loaned to a producer for the movie Lydia, which was a complete and total failure, and he continued trying to freelance. From here, he was cast to play in 5 Hopalong Cassidy films, and the film So Proudly We Hail, the latter of which inspired him to enlist in the Army, and he was drafted in 1943. While in the Army, He continued to act, performing in the USAAF's Broadway show Winged Victory. After returning at the end of the war, left with a broken career and a number of studios that were shut down or slowed in production, it wasn't until 1951 that he was offered the role of Superman in The Adventures of Superman. Working on The Adventures of Superman was stressful for Reeves as an actor, as their contracts were incredibly restrictive, and the actors were expected to be available and not take any roles whatsoever. Despite the stress, Reeves took his role model status very seriously. He avoided smoking anywhere where children could potentially see him, and eventually he quit altogether. He kept his private life out of the public's eye for the most part, and did all he could to keep going with the role. During the second season, he was able to find sporadic acting roles in other small projects, and was even a national chairman for the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation, a foundation built to research and fight the disease of the same name. And, while he was reportedly unhappy with his role as Superman, wanting more money, and wanting to expand his repertoire at the age of 40 and older, he continued playing the part until 1959. On June 16th of 1959, George Reeves died of a gunshot wound to his head in his home at some point between 1:30 a.m. and 2 a.m., and the police arrived within the hour. When this event took place, he was not alone in his home. There were 4 other people present: Lenora Lemon, Reeves' fiancée, William Bliss, writer Robert Condon, and Carol von Ronkel. According to those present, they had been dining earlier in the evening, and Reeves and Lemon had an argument at the restaurant, and then they had all returned to the house, though there are conflicting reports. At some point, around midnight, Reeves went to bed, and when Bliss and von Ronkel arrived, an impromptu party had started. After a while, Reeves came downstairs to complain about the noise, but eventually stayed downstairs with the guests to have a few drinks. After a little bit, Reeves decided to go back to bed, and within a few moments, the guests heard a single gunshot coming from upstairs. But here is where things start to get sketchy. Neither Lenora Lemon nor her guests were in any hurry to call the police when they heard the gunshot. They claimed that they were in shock and intoxicated, which caused the delay. Reeves' fiancée was incredibly pushy to the public about the fact that Reeves had allegedly committed suicide because he was depressed about his failed acting career. It was also reported that Lemon had blurted out to the guests he's probably going to shoot himself, and then stated, "See, I told you so," when they heard the gunshot. Lemon also claimed to be in the living room when the shooting happened. However, again, there were conflicting reports that put her in the bedroom or near the bedroom when it happened. It was also reported that Bill Bliss had told someone that was not at the party that immediately after the gunshot happened, Lemon ran down the stairs and said, "Tell them I was down here." There were also a number of questionable findings at the scene. There were no fingerprints on the gun, no GSR was found on Reeves' hands, though some sources state that it may not have been tested for. The bullet that killed Reeves was recovered from the ceiling, and the shell casing was found underneath his body. In addition to this, there were 2 bullets pulled from the bedroom floor, and all 3 rounds were determined to have been shot by the same gun, but the witnesses stated they had only heard 1 shot. Despite these unanswered questions, the death was still listed as a suicide and officially closed as such. While it was reopened at one point by Reeves' mother, the second autopsy found little that was new. There was a statement that bruises were found on the head and body that were of unknown origin. Despite this, the autopsy was listed as having no new findings, and closed out with the same conclusion as the first. In the end, this case is officially closed as a suicide, but with all the questions that remain unanswered, the real question is, had George really ended his own life? Unfortunately, given the age of this case, we may never know. Number 1. Brittany Murphy. Brittany Murphy was an American actress and singer that was born on November 10th of 1977. She was born in Atlanta, Georgia, to Sharon Murphy and Angelo Bertolotti, the couple divorcing a mere 2 years after Brittany was born. Her mother then took her up to Edison, New Jersey, where she raised Brittany throughout her childhood. In 1991, her family decided to move to Los Angeles so that Brittany could pursue her acting career. Brittany stated that this decision was made by her mother in an attempt to get her to further pursue her dreams, stating that when Brittany asked to move to California, her mother sold everything and agreed that they should do so. Murphy was successful in landing her first Hollywood role in the series Drexel's Class, and then further guest starred on a number of shows including Frasier. She then also had recurring roles in Sister Sister, Party of Five, and Boy Meets World. From there, her career seemed to take off, with her breakthrough role being in the 1995 film Clueless, followed by the supporting roles in the movie Girl Interrupted, alongside Winona Ryder and Angelina Jolie. She also voice acted Luann Platter and Joseph Gribble on the animated sitcom King of the Hill. Her acting career further blossomed into the 2000s, with a leading role in Don't Say a Word, 8 Mile, Uptown Girls, Just Married, Little Black Book, and the critically acclaimed Sin City. From here, she starred in a number of independent films, and even returned to voice acting for the movie Happy Feet. All of this points to an incredibly successful actress. She had roles in critically acclaimed movies, was well-known, well-liked, and well-respected. Throughout the 2000s, she dated Ashton Kutcher, her talent manager Jeff Quadenetz, and Joe Macaluso, who was a production assistant for the film Little Black Book. Eventually, in 2006, she married the British screenwriter Simon Monjack. Being in the Hollywood lights typically reflect scandal, though, honestly, Brittany seemed to be a fairly straightforward person. In the early 2000s, she lost a significant amount of weight, which then led to reported rumors of cocaine abuse. Rumors that she vehemently denied and stated that she had never even tried it in her entire life. On December 20th of 2009, around 8 a.m., the Los Angeles Fire Department responded to a medical emergency at the home where Brittany and her husband Simon lived. She had reportedly collapsed in the bathroom and was unresponsive. Medics attempted to resuscitate, but she was eventually transported to Cedars-Sinai Medical, where she passed away at 10:04 after going into a cardiac arrest. Initially, her death was stated as having appeared to be natural, and her death certificate listed the cause of death as being deferred, which essentially means that they chose not to state the manner of death at the time of the autopsy, and typically is what is chosen when more tests are necessary. It wasn't until February 4th, a full 2 months after, that her cause of death was listed as pneumonia, with secondary factors of iron deficiency anemia and multiple drug intoxication. This was then followed up on February 25th when the coroner released a report that stated that Brittany had been taking a range of over-the-counter prescription medications for a cold or respiratory infection. These medications included hydrocodone, acetaminophen, L-methamphetamine, and chlorpheniramine, all of which were legal medications. Now, this is tragic, obviously, but the question quickly becomes, what makes it mysterious? It seems fairly open and shut. It was an accidental and very saddening death that ended a life way too soon. The part that does make this strange is that Simon Monjack, Brittany's husband, died in May of 2010. The cause of death? Acute pneumonia and severe anemia. His cause of death was listed to be the same as hers, only a mere 5 months after she had passed away. From here, the LA County Department of Health stated that toxic mold could have been the cause of death. However, this was dismissed by the coroner, who stated that there was no indication of mold being a factor. Initially, Brittany's mother, Sharon, agreed that the claims of mold were absurd. But then, in 2011, she switched her stance and stated that mold was likely what had killed them both. All of this gets even more complex the more you look into it. In November of 2009, around a month prior to Brittany's death, she, her husband, and her mother traveled to Puerto Rico to film a movie that Brittany was fired from on the first day, and it was stated that her husband's drunken antics were the reason for her being fired. After she was terminated from the project, they stayed on the island for a short vacation. A vacation that ended with her husband catching staphylococcus, having a mild heart attack, and requiring CPR on the flight back. Brittany also caught Staphylococcus aureus, and it hit her quite hard. She ended up with a horrible case of laryngitis and was also having issues with anemia. She refused to seek medical attention for a full 6 weeks, but then decided to book an appointment, one that she never made it to. The night before her death was reportedly terrible for her. She couldn't breathe, her lips were blue, and she was crying, saying that she was going to die. Her husband was quick to try to capitalize on her death, as he had contacted a manager to write a book about how Brittany had died of a quote-unquote broken heart, due to how badly she had been treated in Hollywood. His offer was declined, and it was quickly determined that what he was telling them about himself was mostly false, and that he was trying to further upsell himself to be more interesting. As stated prior, Simon had died in the same room that Brittany had, only a few months later, though it was reported that Sharon was reportedly sleeping in the same bed as him when he passed away, which can certainly add some speculation into this situation. In 2013, Brittany's father, who was mostly absent from her life, had requested a private toxicology test on his daughter, and then he publicized the results. The results were that his daughter had higher than normal levels of 10 heavy metals, which was stated as having been likely caused by a third-party poisoning, but it was also noted that it could have come from other sources. In the end, this whole situation lies on a 50-50. It's both possible that she passed away from natural causes, or she could have been murdered in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, her mother denied that she was poisoned, but her father held strong on his beliefs until he died. We'll never know either way, but the official cause of death is, as stated earlier, pneumonia with secondary factors of iron deficiency and multiple drug intoxication. No matter how you look at it, her life was lost much too early, and this is truly a tragic situation. So this was a collection of 3 mysterious celebrity deaths, all of them tragic, and all of them certainly worth looking into further to eventually come up with your own conclusions. What makes these even worse is that we will likely never have a solid answer to what actually happened, and all we can do is speculate. All that said, friends, what do you think? What are your opinions on these 3 cases? Do you believe that the official reports are what actually happened? Or is there more to these cases than what officials have said? If you enjoyed this video and would like more like this, please subscribe to the channel, as I'm working on content like this and much, much more. Also, please consider hitting that thumbs up to help grow the channel, and leave me a comment letting me know what your thoughts are. All that said, friends, I hope you have a beautiful night, and I do hope to see you on the next episode of Raven Investigates. But until then, keep your eyes open.